Thank you. Let us start with the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as a one with thee know he is also one with every other. Let us have 1 minute meditation. Thank you. Now I request Sister Vibha ji to start today's program.
Thank you, Pradeep ji. Namaste and good evening, dear brothers and sisters. So today is the last and concluding part of chronological letter number 18, Mahatma letters to AP Senate, the letter number 9. I would like to tell you that since there is a power disturbance at my place due to a ongoing storm, so sometimes the electricity might fail. But we will continue with the slides because my laptop is there on UPS. So we have already covered 3 sessions of this letter. And in the last session, we saw that Mahatma Ji says, there is a hierarchy of souls from the lowest forms of matter up to the world soul. And even the purest spirits, they are not exempt from the universal laws of matter. This cycle of intelligent existences, it begins on globe A. Globe A is on the 4th plane. And then this cycle descends to globe B, to C, and then to D, that is our physical earth. Here on the physical earth, spirit and matter are equilibrized. Then the life cycle ascends to globe E, F, and finally G, which is again on the 4th plane. So this is the grand cycle. It is one complete round through 7 globes. It is called the macrocosm or one manvantar. Likewise, on every globe, minor cycles take place. This minor cycles, it comprises of 7 rotations. 7 rotations within each kingdom. This includes the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and also the human kingdom. In the human kingdom, these 7 rotations are nothing but the 7 root races. So in each kingdom, it is happening simultaneously on every globe. Then in the grand cycle, when this grand cycle reaches our globe D, that is the physical earth, the universal law of selection, it determines which egos will continue on their onward journey and which will be thrown into still lower worlds, that is the 6th gati. The laggard egos, this we saw in our previous session. Laggard egos are those in which matter is entirely divorced from spirit. That means spirit and matter, they are so diversified that such egos will not be able to complete the goal of evolution till the 7th round. Therefore, they must perish by the millions. While these egos, those egos who are purified, they are purified of this material nature and they are tending towards spiritual nature, they will continue to ascend to the higher globes until globe G. And they will re-become the once pure planetary spirit. And then higher still, they will merge into the mystery of the absolute. Now, in this entire letter, the question under consideration was, why communication between pure disembodied spirit and men is supremely difficult, if not impossible. So for this, Mahatma Ji mentioned that there are three reasons for this. The first being that the atmosphere surrounding the spirit world and the living world, they are antagonistic to each other. Secondly, the spiritual conditions of the higher world, they are dissimilar to the physiological conditions which prevail in our living world. And thirdly, man and spirit are the foci of elliptical orbits of existences. They cannot meet. In man, matter dominates the spirit. And in the spirit world, matter is extremely subtle. It is dominated by the spirit. Therefore, they cannot meet. After this, Mahatma Ji mentions that there is an even stronger obstacle which bars this communication. That means communication between the spirit world and the world of living men. So this we are going to begin in today's session. I will share the slides with you. So we have completed up to slide number 23. These three conditions, I just spoke about them. Now we will go to the next slide. So what is an even stronger obstacle which bars such communication? For that, Mahatma Ji says, like a rosary composed of white and black beads alternating with each other, so that concatenation of worlds is made up of worlds of causes and worlds of effects. The latter, the direct result produced by the former. Thus, it becomes evident that every sphere of cause, and our earth is one, is not only interlinked with and surrounded by, but actually separated from its nearest neighbor, the higher sphere of causality, by an impenetrable atmosphere in its spiritual sense, of effects bordering on and even interlinking, never mixing, with the next sphere. For one is active, the other passive. The world of causes positive, that of effects negative. This passive resistance can be overcome but under conditions of which your most learned spiritualists have not the faintest idea. Please remember, spiritualist always refers to those people who believe in mediumship and who believe that they can communicate with the spirits of the dead to the world of living men. So as we said in the beginning, that this chain of 7 globes, it is made up of alternating world of causes, they are the active worlds, and the world of effects, which are the passive worlds. So this Mahatma Ji has compared to the black and white beads of the rosary. Rosary is that japa mala which is used to chant the name of God or to chant any mantra. So the world of causes and world of effects is like that. First, one world of cause, then one world of effect. Now, they are not placed sequentially. They are overlapping and interpenetrating. So you can imagine them as interpenetrating spheres. Our physical earth is the world of cause. Between it and the next causal world lies the world of effects, which does not allow communication between the two. So this world of effects is the astral world. And the next causal world is the higher mental and buddhic. That is the next causal world. So between the higher causal world and this lower causal world, which is our earth, there is the astral world, which is the world of effects. Only the adepts know how to overcome this obstacle to enable communication under certain conditions. A medium will certainly not know how to do it. So this is how are the alternating worlds. All movement is, so to say, polar. It is very difficult to convey my meaning to you at this point, but I will go to the end. I am aware of my failure to bring before you these, to us, axiomatical truths in any other form but that of a simple logical postulate, if so much, they being capable of absolute and unequivocal demonstration, but to the highest seers. But I'll give you food for thought if nothing else. So a polarity here, it means having two opposite or contradictory tendencies or aspects. For example, spirit and matter. They are the two poles of one and the same reality. Mahatma Ji says that all movement is polar, but he is unable to demonstrate these self-evident axiomatical truths to Sinet. They are self-evident and axiomatical to the highest seer. They can be seen by the highest seer. But to Sinet, these are not self-evident truths. Yet he is explaining them to Sinet, so at least Sinet can understand them intellectually. Same is the case with us. At least we can try to understand these truths intellectually, if not experientially. The second point says, the intermediary spheres, being but the projected shadows of the worlds of causes, are negatived by the last. I'll read again. The intermediary spheres, being but the projected shadows of the worlds of causes, are negatived by the last. They are the great halting places, the stations in which the new self-conscious egos to be, the self-begotten progeny of the old and disembodied egos of our planet are gestated. So this intermediary spheres is referring to the astral world, which is the shadow world. After physical death, the new egos which will reincarnate, they lie dormant in the astral world. That is the higher principles which have separated from the principle of calm. So they are gestating, they are lying dormant in the astral world. In a way, the new ego is actually the child of the previous ego, which was living on the physical earth. This new ego is self-created by gathering up all the experiences of the previous life. So all these previous experiences, they are woven together into the new ego, which will reincarnate. So it is the self-created progeny of the previous ego. The last point says, before the new phoenix, reborn of the ashes of its parent, can soar higher to a better, more spiritual, the perfect world, still a world of matter. It has to pass through the process of a new birth, so to say. And as on our earth, where the 2/3 of infants are either stillborn or die in infancy, so in our worlds of effects. So here there is a reference to phoenix. Phoenix is a mythological bird. It is said that the bird burns on a pyre, but it rises again out of the ashes. So similarly, this new ego, the ego which is gestating in the astral world, it is compared to the phoenix. It goes into dormant state in the astral world and then it rises again in the devachanic state. So that is like the rising of the phoenix. And since it was gestating in the astral sphere, it is like a new birth to come into the devachanic world. Mahatma Ji also mentions that many egos do not make it to that state, the devachanic state. They perish before that. Just like babies who are born on earth, some are born, some are not born. They perish even before birth. So similarly, that new ego may not be born into the devachanic world. It might perish before that. Next, he mentions, on earth, it is still the physiological and mental defects, the sins of the progenitors, which are visited upon the issue in that land of shadows. The new and yet unconscious ego, fetuses, becomes the just victim of the transgressions of its old self, whose karma, merit and demerit, will alone weave out its future destiny. For life on earth, sometimes a person may be born with some physiological defect or some mental defect, and this can be attributed to many factors. They can be genetic factors, or they can be attributed to his progenitors, that is, the persons from whom he descended. So, some hereditary defect. Similarly, in the astral world, the ego which is gestating, it is compared to that fetus. So, this ego is going to reincarnate again, and it suffers the consequence of its old self, the previous ego which already lived, the good and bad karma which was accrued in that life by the previous ego. Those karma determine the destiny of the new ego to be born. So just like when a child is born on earth, he might have certain defects due to his ancestry. Similarly, the new ego which will reincarnate, that will have to suffer. His destiny will be determined by the karma of the previous ego, which is in a way its parent. In that world, my good friend, we find but unconscious, self-acting, ex-human machines, souls in their transition state, whose dormant faculties and individuality lie as a butterfly in its chrysalis, and spiritualists would yet have them talk sense. So this we know, when a man dies, his physical body, etheric body, and pran, they will perish, they disappear. Only the upper four principles, they survive into the astral world. The upper four principles are Atma, Buddhi, Manas, and Kam. That is the principle of desire. So they will survive after physical death. Then in astral sphere, this desire principle or Kam, it is always drawing the Manas down into material passions and desires, depending on what kind of life that ego had lived while it was still alive. So if that man had led a sufficiently good life, then the manas will try to escape all this attraction of Kam, and it will aspire towards Atma or the spirit. Then whatever is noble, whatever are the pure and spiritual elements of the manas, they will get separated from Kam and they will be assimilated into Buddhi. So then Atma, Buddhi, Manas, it goes into gestation in the astral sphere. It is in a transitional state. The soul, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, it is in a transitional state in the astral world. So it is compared to a butterfly. Butterfly, when the larva becomes a pupa, so that is a stage in the development of the butterfly. So that pupal stage is called the chrysalis. The butterfly is in chrysalis, and later the soul will awaken into the devachanic world, just like the butterfly emerges from its chrysalis. So Mahatma Ji clarifies to Sinet that spiritualists think that the souls are communicating with the medium, whereas they are actually dormant. They are in a chrysalis like the butterfly. In the last point, Mahatma Ji mentions, caught at times into the vortex of the abnormal mediumistic current, they become the unconscious echoes of thoughts and ideas crystallized around those present. Every positive, well-directed mind is capable of neutralizing such secondary effects in a seance room. So sometimes what happens, these dormant souls, the gestating souls, they are caught into the astral current of the medium. And unconsciously, they are reflecting the thoughts of the people who are gathered for that meeting. So thoughts are things. And these gestating souls, they are unconsciously reflecting whatever the people are thinking. And the people are thinking that they are going to talk to the spirit who is now disembodied. So that is the thought of the public which is gathered. So these sleeping souls, the dormant souls, they are unconsciously reflecting the same thoughts. But a person who is strong-willed, who is positive-minded, he will not be taken in by these appearances. And he can see really what it is, what actually is happening. So such a person was HPB, if you remember, in that meeting which took place in New York when she first met Colonel Olcott. So she could actually see what was happening. It was a seance meeting at that time. Then moving to the next slide. The world below ours is worse yet. The former is harmless at least, It is more sinned against by being disturbed than sinning. The latter allowing the retention of full consciousness as being 100-fold more material is positively dangerous. Now, this is a very new and important point which is being referred to in this letter. This world below ours, it is a reference to the 8th sphere. The cyclic process of evolution we have seen in that microcosm. In the one round, there are only 7 spheres in the Earth chain. But there is an 8th sphere in connection with our Earth, the 4th globe. And this 4th globe, we know it is the turning point in the cyclic chain. From the descending cycle, now it turns towards the ascending cycle. So this 8th sphere, it is not part of this chain of 7. It is out of that circuit, but it follows the Earth in its penumbra. Penumbra is the semi-shadow region of the Earth. So it is always following the Earth. What is this 8th sphere? It is basically likened to a dust hole. It is a place, it is said, where all the garbage and filth of Earth is consumed. This is just a figure of speech. What actually happens is that in the 8th sphere, all the dross of the cosmic matter, which is pertaining to our planet, the physical Earth, it is getting continually remodeled. It is recycled, so to say. So that is why this 8th sphere is likened to a dust hole. Now, what happens in this 8th sphere? Any traveler to that 8th sphere never returns from it. So who travels there, and why should anybody travel there? The absolute non-entities, the failures of nature, they are to be remodeled entirely. The laggard egos. Now, laggard egos are what? This we have seen previously. When the manas is not activated, so there is no link between the monad and the personality. Monad is Atma Buddhi, personality is the lower quaternary. So if manas is not activated, then no light from the monad can reach the personality. So you can see how spirituality and the personality are absolutely diversified. They are divorced from each other. So these egos, they cannot progress. They are the laggard egos. Secondly, those men in whom the manas is fully divorced from buddhi and totally consumed by kam, even during their earth life. So manas is activated, no doubt, but it is not allowing any light of buddhi to reach the personality because manas is totally consumed by kam. In such men, the Atma Buddhi is separated from the manas during their lifetime itself, and they live as soulless human beings because Atma Buddhi Manas is no longer shining. Manas is totally involved with Kam. Manas mingles with Kam, it becomes the animal soul, and it goes down this bottomless pit of the 8th sphere. So these are the irretrievably bad egos. They yield no might from the 5th principle, no ray shining forth from the higher manas or the buddhi manas. Such egos have to be annihilated. They have to disappear into the 8th sphere. So such kind are the travelers to the 8th sphere. But they are fully conscious. Why? Even when they are in that 8th sphere, they are fully conscious because such egos, that manas is totally mingled with Kam. So that principle of Kam is galvanized. It is conscious. The egos retain their full consciousness due to Kam or desire, and they have 100-fold more material nature than those entities in the astral sphere. In the astral sphere, we saw that those souls are sleeping, they are dormant, and they get caught in that astral current. So actually, they are being sinned against because we are disturbing their sleep, or the spiritualists are disturbing their gestation period. So that may not be so harmful as this region where these egos, they are fully conscious and they are 100-fold more material. Their nature is like that. So we can imagine what influence they can bear upon the living men in the seance rooms. Any contact with them through a medium would be extremely dangerous. The next point mentions the notion of hell and purgatory, of paradise and resurrections are all caricatured, distorted echoes of the primeval one truth taught humanity in the infancy of its races by every first messenger, the planetary spirit, mentioned on the reverse of page the third, and whose remembrance lingered in the memory of man as Elu of the Chaldees, Osiris of the Egyptian, Vishnu, the first Buddhas, and so on. In the beginning of the letter, we had studied about the planetary spirit and how it sounds the keynote of truth. This keynote of truth is sounded at the beginning of a round and at the start of each root race. This truth is about the origin and evolution of man and the universe. This truth is about all these various stages of consciousness, the astral sphere, the eighth sphere, the devachanic state, and its antithesis, which is the eighth sphere, or also called avicii. They are all encompassed in this keynote of truth, because that is the cycle of evolution of the universe. As is also this immortal divine nature of man. So this is also an aspect of truth, that the nature of man is divine and the splendor of the unlimited growth of its soul. So on one end, we have the immortal divine nature of man and unlimited growth of its soul. And on the other end, we have these eight sphere, the avicii, which is the antithesis of devachan. So they are all encompassed in this keynote of truth, which is struck at the beginning of the cycle. And this truth, it lingers in the memory of those men. And it has given rise to this ideas and the concepts like hell, heaven, purgatory, resurrection. In almost all religion, they are there in one form or the other. Further in the letter, Mahatma Ji has mentioned the lower world of effects is the sphere of such distorted thoughts. Lower world is the eighth sphere. The lower world of effects is the sphere of such distorted thoughts, of the most sensual conceptions and pictures of anthropomorphic deities, the outcreations of their creators, the sensual human minds of people who have never outgrown their brutehood on earth. Remembering thoughts are things, have tenacity, coherence, and life, that they are real entities. The rest will become plain. Disembodied, the creator is attracted naturally to its creation and creatures, sucked in by the maelstrom dug out by his own hands. But I must pause, for volumes would hardly suffice to explain all that was said by me in this letter. Now here again, some more information about this eighth sphere. The eighth sphere, or the lower world, is the region of most materialistic thoughts. The materialistic thoughts are those which gratify the five senses. Such men were men only in form, only they had a human form, but their nature remained of brute. The nature remained that of animal. The strong sensual desires of such men creates real living thought forms. This is a very important thing which Mahatma Ji has mentioned. Thoughts are things. We must properly meditate on it because we are all the time thinking. Now here, with respect to this eighth sphere, what he's saying, thoughts are things. They have tenacity, coherence, and life that are real entities. Thoughts are endowed with form and vitality by their creator. The person who is thinking, he will generate the thought form and he will endow that thought form with energy, that thought energy, which is the vitality which animates and enlivens that thought. So the thoughts become living entities. The thought forms are tenacious. Tenacious meaning they will persist. They will not die away because they are endowed with energy. And they set up resonance in the mental matter of another person. With whatever frequency they are vibrating, they will set up a resonance in the mental matter of another person, reinforcing similar thought in other people. While we are speaking about this, you can recall that if such entities are, they come into that seance room where they are where the medium is trying to communicate with them. This is what is happening, that thought forms. So they reinforce similar thoughts in other people, and these thought forms are coherent. That means they are attracted to like thoughts. This is their coherence, to bring together, to like attract thoughts. And after physical death, the remaining principles of the person who had created all these thought forms during his lifetime, so after his physical death, he is attracted to his own creations. Because his thoughts were so strong, they are still persisting. And now he is attracted to them. But his lower three principles are not there: physical, astral, and the physical body, etheric body, and the principle of the pran, the vitality. They are not there because physical death has occurred. So the higher principles, they are now attracted to this, his creations, thought form creations. And Mahatmaji says that on this topic, we can speak volumes and volumes, but he wants to further explain to Senate. So he goes on further to say, the truth is one and cannot admit of diametrically opposite views. And pure spirits who see it as it is, with the wheel of matter entirely drawn from it, cannot err. Now, so 4 points are mentioned. If we allow of different aspects or portions of the whole truth being visible to different agencies or intelligences, each under various conditions. Second, if we admit the fact of various or different agencies, individual brothers, for instance, endeavoring to develop the egos of different individuals without subjecting entirely their wills to their own, as it is forbidden, but by availing themselves of their physical, moral, and intellectual idiosyncrasies. Third is, if we add to this the countless cosmical influences which distort and deflect all efforts to achieve definite purposes. And the fourth one, if we remember, moreover, the direct hostility of the brethren of the shadow, always on the watch to perplex and haze the neophyte's brain, I think we shall have no difficulty in understanding how even a definite spiritual advance may to a certain extent lead different individuals to apparently different conclusions and theories. So basically, this was Sinnett's doubt. He was saying that how a spiritual advance by different people can lead to different theories, because it means then the truth is not same. So these are the 4 pointers which Mahatmaji has given, that why it happens like that. Sinnett's doubt was that just as men differ in their ideas, is it possible that the spirit guide was that imperator who was guiding Stanton Moses. So is it possible that the spirit guide also differ in their ideas because the spirit may belong to different realms? This was his doubt. To this, Mahatmaji says that contradictory doctrines cannot exist in different realms because truth is one. In addition, pure spirits are not hindered by the wheel of matter. Pure spirits, they cannot make any error because they are not hindered or they are not covered by this wheel of matter. But as people advance spiritually, their ideas about truth may differ with each other to certain degree. And there are many reasons for this. These are the 4 reasons which he has cited. The first reason is that depending on people's intelligence and circumstances, they may discern different aspects of truth. Depending on how a person's intelligence is, what are his circumstances, they discern different aspects of truth. Now, this is obvious. We know the story of the 4 blind men and the elephant. All the men are trying to describe the elephant by touching it, and they are blindfolded. So they give different description of the elephant because they are touching or feeling different aspects of the elephant. The same it is with truth. The second reason was, moreover, none of the adept brothers controls the will of the aspirant. This Mahatmaji has mentioned again and again. They do not control the will of any aspirant. In fact, the adepts help the aspirant to progress spiritually with his own unique physical, moral, and intellectual characteristics. Whatever is the physical characteristic of the aspirant, his moral and his intellectual characteristics. Along with that only, he has to progress spiritually. These factors are not controlled by the adepts. The third reason is that there are cosmic influences which influence the aspirant. And also there are the adverse influences of the brothers of shadow, the black adepts. And these have a bearing on the spiritual advance of the aspirant. So all these parameters, all these factors, they have an influence on how the aspirant spiritually advances. So due to these factors, even a real spiritual advancement by different aspirants can apparently seem different. The word apparently is very crucial. Apparently it seems different, but actually it is the same. So having said this, we move to the next slide. Having confessed to you that I had no right to interfere with Imperator's secrets and plans, I must say that so far, however, he has proved the wisest of us. Had our policy been the same, we would both be happier. You might have implicitly believed anything coming from me, and I would have felt less responsible for you before my guides. So Master is using a little humor over here. He says that if he would have instructed Sinet just the way Imperator was instructing Stanton Moses, then perhaps Sinet would not have so many doubts. Currently, Sinet is always having doubts and asking questions to the master. But if the relation between them would have been like Imperator and Stanton Moses, then Sinet would believe anything that would come from the Mahatma, and he would not have these doubts. But currently, they are sharing a different relation. They were communicating by these letters. And Mahatma Ji feels responsible for Sinet in front of the senior adepts. He wants to prove to the senior adepts that Sinet is capable and he is making a steady advance spiritually. In the next point, the book is out and we have to patiently wait for the results of that first serious shot at the enemy. When the first hum and ding-dong of adverse criticism is hushed, thoughtful men will read and ponder over the book, as they have never pondered over the most scientific efforts of Wallace and Crookes to reconcile modern science with spirits, and the little seed will grow and thrive. The book which is being referred to here is The Occult World. It was written by Sinet and published in 1881. That book was based on all these theosophical teachings which Sinet was receiving from the Mahatma in his letters. And these radical occult ideas, they immediately caught the attention of the European world. New ideas are always met with opposition at first. But these ideas, they work like seeds. You can throw the seeds and then in due time, the seeds will sprout. So just like that, these ideas, Mahatma Ji says, they are like seeds. Once planted, they grow where the soil of mind is fertile. So Mahatma Ji reassures Sinet about his book. Then these next two slides are very important. They are giving a very sublime truth. It says, if for generations we have shut out the world from the knowledge of our knowledge, it is on account of its absolute unfitness. And if notwithstanding proofs given, it still refuses yielding to evidence, then will we at the end of this cycle retire into solitude and our kingdom of silence once more. We have offered to exhume the primeval strata of man's being, his basic nature, and lay bare the wonderful complications of his inner self, something never to be achieved by physiology or even psychology in its ultimate expression, and demonstrate it scientifically. It matters not to them if the excavations be so deep, the rocks so rough and sharp, that in diving into that, to them, fathomless ocean, most of us perish in the dangerous exploration. For it is we who were the divers and the pioneers, and the men of science have but to reap where we have sown. So here Mahatma Ji is giving some information about the adepts, about his own self. The adepts of the Great White Brotherhood, they are the custodian of the knowledge of truth. They are the custodian of Brahma Vidya or Theosophy. This knowledge was given by higher and exalted beings who watched over the childhood of humanity. These traditions and teachings, they were passed orally by one early race to another. And thousands of generations of seers, they verified these oral traditions by direct experience, their own independent vision, by checking, testing, and verifying them in every department of nature. They used their own being as the laboratory. They unraveled and validated the truths about the basic nature of man, about his constitution, about his inner self. These are subjective states. They can never be verified by objective methods of physiology or even psychology. The masters of wisdom or the adepts of our race, this fifth race, they have passed their lives in learning, not in teaching. They developed and perfected their physical, mental, psychic, and spiritual nature to the utmost possible degree. On this path of knowledge and strict spiritual discipline, this path is called the razor's edge path. So, on this path, many perished, but many were triumphant. Yet, no vision of any one adept was accepted till it was checked and confirmed by the independent vision of other adepts and also by centuries of experiences. So these adepts, they are rightly called the pioneers. It is they who brought out the pearls of occult knowledge for the benefit of the scientists of modern science. But also, great knowledge puts great power in the hands of the learner. And if the men, the present day men, they still prove unfit, they prove unworthy of this kind of knowledge, then at the end of the present cycle, these adepts shall withdraw back into their realm of silence. So, a lot of part of this explanation I have taken from the collected writings in which HPB had very nicely elaborated about how these Mahatmas came into the possession and became the custodians of this knowledge. In the next slide, Mahatma Ji further elaborates, it is our mission to plunge and bring the pearls of truth to the surface, theirs to clean and set them into scientific jewels. And if they refuse to touch the ill-shapen oyster shell, insisting that there is nor cannot be any precious pearl inside it, then shall we once more wash our hands of any responsibility before mankind. So this is the same thing, last point of the previous slide. The pearls of truth, they are the occult knowledge. They are based on the occult but scientific laws. If the men of modern science, they cannot understand these occult truths and they dismiss them, they think it is humbug and they dismiss them, then the adepts cannot help it and they will not be responsible for mankind. So we may not have experienced those truths, but we have to still accept it and then verify and validate it for ourselves rather than dismissing it. In the next point, for countless generations hath the adept builded a fane. Fane is a temple. Builded a fane of imperishable rocks, a giant star of infinite thought, wherein the Titan dwelt and will yet, if need be, dwell alone, emerging from it, but at the end of every cycle, to invite the elect of mankind to cooperate with him and help in his turn enlighten superstitious man. In this point, Mahatma KH has represented a very sublime truth, and that too with great symbolism. Fane, as we said, is a temple. Temple, which is the tower of infinite thought. What is this tower of infinite thought? It is basically the sounding of the keynote of truth by the highest planetary spirits at the beginning of the root race or the beginning of the cycle. This keynote of truth, they are the aspects of primeval truths. And how is this keynote sounded? It is basically passed as reverberations in mental matter. These reverberations in mental matter, it is creating a thought form. So this is what is referred to as the infinite thought tower. In the course of evolution of the races, the adept tries to preserve this temple. He tries to preserve this tower, which is the thought form of the primeval truth, which is built out of these imperishable primeval thought vibrations. And the adepts are the custodians of these thoughts, these thought forms, this knowledge. In this tower dwells the Titan. Titan is something which is of giant proportions. So who is the Titan? Titan refers to the eternal truth. This truth, it is infinite. Therefore, it is being referred to as Titan. And it is dwelling in that tower. That tower is what? It is the keynote of truth, which was sounded by the planetary spirit. So aspects of that eternal truth forms this star, and the eternal truth dwells in that star. That is the meaning. At the end of every cycle, the adepts lift a corner of the wheel to partly reveal these truths to these ideas of truths. They reveal it to the deserving men, who may in turn become co-workers with the adepts to enlighten others. The third point, and we will go on in that periodical work of ours. We will not allow ourselves to be baffled in our philanthropic attempts until that day when the foundations of a new continent of thought are so firmly built that no amount of opposition and ignorant malice, guided by the brethren of the shadow, will be found to prevail. So this periodical work of the adepts, it is this revelation, lifting the corner of the wheel. This is their periodical work. They reveal these aspects of truth at the end of every cycle for human progression and perfection. They continue their philanthropic work to build the foundations of a new continent of thought. This means that by partly revealing the occult truths, the adepts are setting the stage. They are setting the stage to direct human minds. These minds of all the men of the fifth root race will then build the thought form, which is in consonance, which is harmonious with the primeval truth. So this is what they are trying to do. They are directing the minds of men by revealing these occult truths in bits and pieces, so that there is this mental development of men of this fifth root race. See, intellectually, the intellectual development is taking place. Now, the intuitive development has to take place, the higher mental and the buddhic. So that evolution, to bring about that evolution, which will generate that thought form, that is what is the work of the adepts. And that is what is referred as the new continent of thought, when the humanity will start thinking in this new direction, which is revealed by the occult truths, which the Mahatmas are giving us. The adepts continue their periodic work even in the face of greatest opposition shown by people due to their ignorance, and also due to the influence of the brothers of shadow. So this is hampering the work of the Mahatmas, but they still continue it because ultimately mankind has to evolve. But until that day of final triumph, someone has to be sacrificed. Though we accept but voluntary victims, the ungrateful task did lay her low and desolate in the ruins of misery, misapprehension and isolation. But she will have her reward in the hereafter, for we never were ungrateful. So as I said, ultimately entire humanity has to graduate from this state of ignorance to the state of knowledge. And the adepts seek volunteers to be their co-workers in this task. They always say that learn so that you may teach. And why does Mahatma Ji call the volunteers as victims? Because to do this work, it is not an easy task at all. As we have seen from the life of HPB, she dedicated her life to this work, and yet she was the victim to so much slander, so much misunderstanding from the people instead of receiving gratitude. But the Mahatmas, They are very grateful for her work, and they say that she will definitely receive her reward in the times to come. Next point. As regards the adept, not one of my kind, good friend, but far higher. You might have closed your book with those lines of Tennyson's Wakeful Dreamer. You knew him not. How could ye know him? Ye were yet within the narrower circle. He had well nigh reached the last, which, with a region of white flame, pure without heat, into a larger air, upburning, and an ether of black blue, investeth and ingrids all other lives. So, in the previous slide, Mahatmaji spoke about those volunteers, the co-workers. Here he speaks about the adepts, not of his level, but of far higher level. And he has quoted the lines of the poem written by the celebrated 19th century English poet Alfred Tennyson to describe the high adepts. While ordinary men, they live their life in the lowest and the most densest sphere, like we on the physical sphere. The high adepts have almost reached the highest sphere. And there they can discern the pure white flame, shining without heat. A flame which is shining without heat. It is shining into the darkness of absolute, from which everyone or everything gains their existence and into which everything is absorbed. So here Mahatmaji ends the letter, and also there are 6 lines missing from the original letter. But with these lines of the poem, he closes the letter. And he's reminding Sinet that he will tell him something on the 17th of July, then which will make Sinet's doubts go away and he will understand the realities. So with this, we come to the end of this very long letter. Thank you very much. I will now invite Sister Meenakshi ji for the Hindi translation. Then we can go in for the discussion of the letter.
Namaste. Thank you very much, sister. आपने बहुत सुंदर इस लेटर को समझा के दिया है. Thank you. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. लेटर नंबर 18 का हम आखिरी पार्ट ले रहे हैं. मास्टर कहते हैं, एक दूसरे के साथ बारी बारी से सफेद और काले मनकों से बनी माला की तरह वर्ल्ड्स यानी ग्लोब्स की कड़ी, वर्ल्ड्स ऑफ कॉजेज यानी कार्य कारण के जगत और प्रभाव के जगत से बनती है. प्रभाव यह कारणों द्वारा उत्पादित प्रत्यक्ष परिणाम है. इस प्रकार यह स्पष्ट हो जाता है कि हमारी पृथ्वी और कारणों का प्रत्येक गोला क्षेत्र न केवल एक दूसरे से जुड़े हैं और घिरे हुए हैं, बल्कि वास्तव में बगल वाले निकटतम ऊपरी कार्यकारणता के गोला क्षेत्र से आध्यात्मिक दृष्टि से देखा जाए तो प्रभाव के अभेद्य वातावरण से अलग किया हुआ है, जो दूसरे क्षेत्र को घेरे हुए, यहाँ तक कि आपस में जुड़े हुए पर मिश्रित नहीं है, क्योंकि एक सक्रिय है तो दूसरा निष्क्रिय. वर्ल्ड्स ऑफ कॉजेस यानी कार्य कारण जगत धनात्मक है तो वर्ल्ड्स ऑफ इफेक्ट ऋणात्मक. इस अगतिक प्रतिरोध को पार कर सकते हैं, लेकिन ऐसी परिस्थितियों में जिनके बारे में आपके सबसे अधिक पढ़े लिखे आध्यात्मवादियों को जरा भी अंदाजा नहीं, कहा जाए तो संपूर्ण संचलन असंगत है. इस समय मेरा मतितार्थ आपको समझाना बहुत कठिन है, लेकिन मैं शेष तक जाऊंगा. हमारे लिए जो स्वयं सिद्ध सत्य है, उन्हें साधारण तार्किक अभिधारणा में नहीं, बल्कि किसी अन्य रूप में लाने में अपनी विफलता के बारे में मैं जानता हूँ. उनकी अभिव्यक्ति केवल उच्चतम दृष्टाओं को संपूर्णतः और स्पष्ट रूप से होती है, लेकिन अगर कुछ और नहीं तो मैं आपको विचार के लिए खाद्य दूंगा. मध्यवर्ती गोले वर्ल्ड ऑफ कॉजेस की प्रक्षेपित छाया मात्र होने के कारण उसके पहले वाले से वह न्यून हो जाते हैं, कट जाते हैं. नए बनने वाले आत्मचेतन जीवात्मा जो हमारे ग्रह के पुराने और देह रहित जीवात्माओं के स्वयं निर्मित वंशज उनके वह विशेष पड़ाव स्थान, ऐसे स्थानक जहां उनके जन्म के पूर्व रखा जाता है। इससे पहले कि अपने ही राख से पुनः जन्मे नए फोनिक्स पक्षी अधिक उन्नत और परिपूर्ण जगत, जो अभी भी ऐहिक जगत है, उसमें ऊंची उड़ान भरने से पूर्व उसे नए जन्म की प्रक्रिया से गुजरना होता है। वैसे ही हमारे पृथ्वी पर जहाँ 2/3 नवजात शिशु या तो मृत पैदा होते हैं या बचपन में ही उनकी मृत्यु होती है, वैसे ही हमारे वर्ल्ड्स ऑफ इफेक्ट्स में होता है। पृथ्वी पर जैसे पूर्वजों के कर्मों द्वारा उनके वंशजों में शारीरिक तथा मानसिक विकृति आती है, वैसे ही उस लैंड ऑफ शैडोज में यानी छाया जगत में होता है। अभी नया अचेतन भ्रूण जीवात्मा अपने पुराने जन्म के अपराधों का शिकार होता है। सिर्फ उसके कर्म, गुण और दोष ही उसके भविष्य के भाग्य को बुनते हैं। मेरे मित्र, उस जगत में हम केवल अचेतन स्वयं कार्यान्वित मृतप्राय मनुष्यों के तत्वों को देखते हैं। जीव अपने परिवर्तन की स्थिति में जिनकी सुप्त क्षमताएं और व्यक्तित्व अपने कोश में तितली की तरह अव्यक्त पड़ी रहती है, और अध्यात्मवादी उनसे समझदारी की बातें चाहते हैं। कभी कभी असामान्य माध्यमत्व की धारा के भंवर में फंसे जाने पर वे वहां मौजूद लोगों के घनीभूत विचारों और कल्पनाओं की बेसुध प्रतिध्वनि बनते हैं। सियाल्स रूम में प्रत्येक सकारात्मक सुनिर्देशित दिमाग ऐसे दुय्यम प्रभावों को निष्क्रिय करने की क्षमता रखते हैं। हमारे निचले जगत इससे भी बदतर है। कम से कम पहले वाला हानि रहित है। यह बुरा करने से अधिक परेशानी लाने पर ही बुरा करता है। निचला जगत अपनी पूर्ण चेतना में 100 गुना ज्यादा भौतिक होने के कारण, जड़ होने के कारण अधिक खतरनाक है। नरक और यातना, स्वर्ग और पुनर्जीवन की धारणाएं, यह सब एकमेव आदि सत्य के विद्रूप चित्र है। मानव जाति के मूल जाति के शुरुआती दौर में प्रत्येक प्रथम दूत प्लैनेटरी स्पिरिट ने एकमेव आदि सत्य को सिखाया है, जिसका स्मरण मनुष्य की स्मृति में चाइल्डिस के इलू के रूप में, इजिप्शियन के ओसिरिस, विष्णु, पहले के बुद्ध, ऐसे अनेकों के रूप में है। प्रभावों का निचला जगत सबसे विषयासक्त धारणाओं का और छवियों का है। रचनाकारों की कृतियों के मानव रूपी देवता का पृथ्वी पर अपनी पाशविकता से जो कभी उभरे नहीं, उन कामुक मानवी दिमाग के विकृत विचारों का क्षेत्र है। विचार वे चीजें हैं जिनमें दृढ़ पकड़, सुसंगतता और जीवन होता है। वे वास्तविक सत्ताएं हैं। इसे याद रखने से बाकी सब सरल होगा। देह रहित वह विचारों के रचनाकार अपनी विचार निर्मिति और जीव जंतुओं की ओर सहज रूप से अपने ही हाथों खोदे गए भंवर में खींचा जाता है। लेकिन मुझे अब रुकना चाहिए, क्योंकि इस पत्र में मेरे द्वारा कही गई सभी बातों को समझाने के लिए किताबें शायद ही पर्याप्त होगी। सत्य एकमात्र है, अद्वितीय है, और बिल्कुल ही विपरीत विचारों को स्वीकार नहीं कर सकता। और शुद्ध प्रेतात्माएं विचारों के ऊपर के मायाजाल को संपूर्णतः हटाकर सत्य जैसा है वैसे देखती है। वे गलती नहीं कर सकती। अभी यदि हम संपूर्ण सत्य के विभिन्न पहलुओं या भागों को अलग अलग एजेंसियों द्वारा विभिन्न परिस्थितियों में प्रकट करने की अनुमति देते हैं, यदि हम महात्मा गणों जैसे विभिन्न एजेंसियों की सत्य तथ्य को स्वीकार करते हैं, जो अलग अलग व्यक्तिगत जीवात्माओं को उनकी इच्छा को पूरी तरह से अपने वश में किए बिना, जैसे कि यह निषिद्ध है, लेकिन उनकी शारीरिक, नैतिक और बौद्धिक विशिष्टताओं को का लाभ उठाकर विकसित करने का प्रयास करते हैं। अगर हम इसमें अनगिनत ब्रह्मांडीय प्रभावों को जोड़ दें, जो निश्चित उद्देश्यों को प्राप्त करने के लिए सभी प्रयासों को विकृत और विक्षेपित करते हैं, साधकों के दिमाग को उलझन और उत्कंठा में डालने के लिए ब्रदर्स ऑफ शैडो, जो हमेशा ताक पर रहते हैं, उनकी प्रत्यक्ष शत्रुता को यदि हम याद रखते हैं, तब मुझे लगता है कि हमें यह समझने में कोई कठिनाई नहीं होगी कि एक निश्चित आध्यात्मिक प्रगति भी कुछ हद तक अलग अलग व्यक्तियों को अलग अलग निष्कर्षों और सिद्धांतों तक कैसे पहुंचा सकती है। मुझे इम्पेरेटर के भेद और योजनाओं में हस्तक्षेप करने का कोई अधिकार नहीं है। इसे आपको कबूल करने के बाद मुझे यह कहना होगा कि अब तक वह हम में से सबसे ज्ञानी साबित हुआ है। यदि हमारी नीति एक समान होती, तब हम दोनों ज्यादा आनंदित होते। आप शायद मुझसे आने वाली किसी भी बात पर विश्वास करते और मैं अपने सद्गुरु के सामने आपके लिए कम उत्तरदायी महसूस करता। आपकी किताबें ने सीनेट की ऑकल्ट वर्ल्ड पब्लिश हुई है और विरोधियों पर किताब के परिणामों की हमें धैर्यपूर्वक प्रतीक्षा करनी होगी। उसके विरोध में आलोचनाओं का कोलाहल शांत होने पर विचारशील लोग किताब को पढ़कर उस पर चिंतन करेंगे और इस तरह गूढ़ विज्ञान का छोटा बीज बढ़ेगा और पनपेगा। यदि सदियों से हमने अपने ज्ञान को दुनिया से परिचित करने में दूर रखा है, तो इसके लिए उनकी संपूर्ण अयोग्यता के कारण, और यदि सबूतों को देने के बावजूद वे फिर भी प्रमाणों को मानने से इनकार करते हैं, फिर हम इस चक्र के अंत में फिर से अपने एकांत में अपने शांति के राज्य में प्रस्थान करेंगे। हमने मनुष्य के आदिम स्तरों को उसके मूल स्वभाव के उत्खनन की यानी बाहर निकालने की और उसके अंतरात्मा की अद्भुतता को उजागर करने का भार लिया है। ऐसा कुछ जिसे कभी भी शरीर विज्ञान या मनोविज्ञान संपूर्णतः अभिव्यक्त करने में सफल नहीं होगा और वैज्ञानिक रूप से प्रदर्शित नहीं हो पाएगा। उन्हें हमें कोई परवाह नहीं यदि यह उत्खनन गहराई तक हो, चट्टानें बहुत खुरदरी और नुकीली हो। उनके लिए जो अथाह महासागर है, उसमें गोता लगाते हुए हम में से अधिकांश इस जोखिम भरी खोज में मिट जाते हैं, क्योंकि वह हम ही थे जो प्रथम गोताखोर थे और प्रथम अन्वेषक अग्रदूत थे, और वैज्ञानिकों को केवल वही फसल काटनी है जहां हमने बोया था। गोता लगाकर सत्य के मोतियों को ऊपरी सतह में लाने का हमारा विशेष कार्य है, और उनका कार्य उन सत्य रूपी मोतियों को साफ करके वैज्ञानिक रत्नों में स्थापित करना। और यदि वे खराब आकार वाली सीप को यह जोर देते हुए छूने से मना करते हैं कि उसके अंदर कोई मूल्यवान मोती नहीं हो सकता, तब हम मानव जाति के प्रति हमारी किसी भी जिम्मेदारियों से हाथ धो लेंगे। अनगिनत पीढ़ियों से सिद्ध योगियों ने अविनाशी चट्टानों से देवालय का निर्माण किया, अपरिमित विचारों का इनफाइनाइट थॉट का ऐसा महाकाय मीनार बनाया जहां पर सनातन सत्य बसते हैं, और यदि आवश्यक हो तब एकांत में वहां पर स्थित रहेंगे। केवल प्रत्येक चक्र के अंत में प्रकट होंगे। अपने सहयोग के लिए मानव जाति में से चुनिंदा लोगों को, अंधविश्वासी मनुष्यों को प्रबुद्ध करने के लिए आमंत्रित करेंगे, और हम अपने नियतकालिक कार्यों में आगे बढ़ेंगे। उस दिन तक हम अपने लोकहितैषी प्रयासों में स्वयं को विफल नहीं होने देंगे। जब तक विचारों के एक नए महाद्वीप की नींव इतनी मजबूती से नहीं बन जाती कि ब्रदर्स ऑफ शैडो द्वारा निर्देशित किसी भी तरह का विरोध और अज्ञानपूर्ण दुर्भावना नहीं होगी। लेकिन अंतिम विजय के उस दिन तक किसी न किसी की बलि चढ़नी ही होती है। हालांकि हम केवल स्वेच्छा से शिकार होने वालों को ही स्वीकार करते हैं। इस अकृतज्ञतापूर्ण कार्य ने एचपीबी को दुख, गलतफहमी और अलगाव के खंडहरों में खिन्न और एकाकी कर दिया। लेकिन इसके लिए एचपीबी को भविष्य में अपना इनाम मिलेगा, क्योंकि हम कभी अकृतज्ञ नहीं थे। जीवन मुक्त महात्मा के बारे में जो भी मेरी तरह नहीं किंतु कई अधिक श्रेष्ठतर है। मेरे मित्र, आपने अपनी किताब का समापन यानी ऑकल्ट वर्ल्ड का समापन लॉर्ड एल्फ्रेड टेनिसन की उन पंक्तियों से की होती जो है वेकफुल ड्रीमर की उन पंक्तियों से की होती। वेकफुल ड्रीमर जिससे आप जानते नहीं, आप उसे कैसे जानेंगे? आपकी चेतना तो संकुचित घेरे में थी। वह तो विस्तृत आकाश में उस अंतिम छोर तक पहुंच गया था जहां धवल अग्निशिखा शुद्ध पवित्र बिना तपिश के जल रही थी और अन्य सभी जीवन काले नीले इथर में रंजित और घिरे हुए थे। पत्र का समापन करते हुए मास्टर कहते हैं, याद रखें 17 जुलाई, और इसके बाद वे कहते हैं कि आपके लिए वह उदात्त सत्यता हो जाएगी, यानी बीच में 6 पंक्तियां हटाई गई थी। थैंक यू, नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, for your excellent translation.
Thank you.
I now invite any questions from the participants or any point for discussion. Pradeep ji, anything you want to say?
It is sufficient for each and everyone to think over, ponder over. So nothing more to add or discuss.
So this was one of the very long letters, and Mahatma ji has given some very sublime truths in this. And in his further letters also, he has discussed a lot about that eighth sphere. Those letters come later on in the series.
This eighth sphere probably Mahatma explain it later.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is right. So some of the description I have taken from the other letter in which a more detailed information was given about that state. In fact, he says that the state in that eighth sphere, you can compare it as a exactly opposite state of Devachan. In Devachan, everything spiritual, everything true, and everything good. So that is the state of consciousness. And in the eighth sphere, the exact opposite is there. The state of consciousness, which is extremely materialistic. It has the most sensual thoughts. So that is considered as the two contradictory phases.
Yes.
Any other question? If there are no more questions, then we can conclude the session for today.
Is it same as earthbound?
Sorry?
Is it same as earthbound?
Earthbound, it is much, much more material than earthbound. It goes to an even more materialistic region. And that region is described as being in the penumbra of the earth. Penumbra is the semi-shadow region of the earth. And it is said that the eighth sphere, it is not part of the 7 spheres on which the macrocosmic cycle takes place. So the
The entities which cross over to the 8th sphere, they are annihilated. They will not continue in the evolution of those 7 spheres. The voice is not clear. I could not hear.
Shitaji, kindly speak clearly.
Shitalji is having some question.
Shitaji, आपका voice break हो रहा है.
That path means Patalok, is it equivalent to that 8th sphere?
That is what Mahatma ji has said, that the idea and the concept of heaven, hell, Swarg, Nark, all they have come because of these innate truths. These are all part of the aspects of the keynote of truth. So that memory in man, it is still there, and it has come in the form of Swarg and Nark. And in the Christian religion, there is this purgatory and hell and heaven. So yes, it is, I think it is a distorted memory of those ideas.
Okay. Thank you, Vibha ji, for a great presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes, Shitalji, do you like any further question?
No, sir, not today.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The most important point for me in this letter was what the Mahatmas are trying to build. They are building the foundation of a new continent of thought, and that is what we are working towards. We have to keep that in mind, because it is our thought form which will ultimately matter, and it is not individual thought form, it is collective. That is why there is so much emphasis in coming together in meetings that builds the collective thought form. And it requires total harmony between all the people. So with this, we conclude the session for today.
Yes.
Okay. Please join me in the closing prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining. Namaste.
Thank you.